Namaste and greetings from Global Dialogue Foundation, Shahani Groups and Meher Roshni Foundation. We welcome you to our Green Drive Fellows campaign series where we interview our Green Drive Fellows ambassadors who are global climate changes, environmental experts and humanitarians. Today we have none other than Mr. Matthias Gelber. Sir has developed a strong connection with nature from a young age and has been passionate advocate of green living ever since. In 2008, he was voted greenest person on planet in online competition by Third Whale in Canada. Welcome to our Global Dialogue Foundation family, sir.
Thank you so much, Sabeel. Nice to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So further ado, I would like to ask you our first question. Sir, you are an impactful speaker and a trainer and on environmental sustainable issues and given talks in 42 countries worldwide. And your engaging style of speaking is always always well received by a diverse audience in civil societies, children's and students and public sectors and businesses people. They are all very much diverted by your lectures and your speakings. So do you think that there are more lessons to learn from the natures, like there are more you can explore more from nature, and yet we are still not have done that till now?
Yes, definitely. Nature is our source of life, and without nature, there is no business either, because we need the fresh air, the clean water, and everything else to make our economy survive, to give humanity its life, to give our economy the productive system. So essentially, we come from the base of the natural system, and we are closely connected with the natural system. And natural system can give us a lot of inspiration, whether it's a simple time we play in the forest and reconnect with nature and get inspired, and as well get reminded that those things that we maybe consider problems in our lives or challenges are less severe than we really thought so. And the Japanese have called it forest therapy, even with a medical twist. And we have been practicing this in many countries, that people who actually connect with nature, are close to nature, even in a hospital setting, they seem to recover faster. So nature is essential for us. It's essential for the economy. It's essential for human health. It's essential for the health of the planet. So it's all connected. We can learn a lot from nature. We can get a lot of inspiration from nature. And that's why we need to focus on making sure that we keep biodiversity and nature in a very good stead and very good position, so that this is not taken from us, because if it's going to be taken from us, humanity as such will suffer greatly from it, not just with our lives, but as well with our economy.
Right, sir, very true. So on that basis, how do you stay ahead from the latest development in the environmental sector? As I said that you have been from the very young age, you were there in the environmental sector. So how do you make those development?
I think nowadays it's quite easy to stay ahead because we all have the internet, and we can even virtually attend a lot of conferences. There are a lot of events out there that are freely available, or even the presentations at those conferences are being made publicly available on YouTube, Facebook, and other channels. It has never been as easy to be in the know as it is today. And it's just a question of time and efficiency of information and quality of information. There is an overload of information, obviously. So we need to select trusted sources. That's, I think, important. And I would say I'm not 100% up to date with everything. There's no need. There's sometimes this fear of missing out, right? FOMO, but I practice more, I think it's called JOMO, joy of missing out. Because if you fear that you might be missing out, you put stress on yourself. But if you have the joy of missing out, both in terms of information or even things, then it contributes to a more harmonious, healthy, and balanced life. So nobody is perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm not always up to date. I don't have the time to be up to date in all areas. And nowadays we have a convergence of things, especially when we look at industry, business, and the financial institutions. Yes, we have governments that set regulation, and that's very important. But currently there's a revolution in the marketplace going on. The investors are judging companies by their ESG practices. ESG stands for environment, social governance. Now, the system isn't perfect yet because the criteria are still not harmonized, but there are suddenly financial investors saying to companies, unless you practice good environmental performance in those areas that are most critical, you look after your employees and the social issues and your suppliers and your communities. This is not philanthropy, by the way. This is working through your core business. It's not about donations. It's about channeling your supply chain budget, your procurement budget, to locally small, sustainably run businesses that are run by maybe underprivileged communities, gender balance, and those issues. So increasingly, we see the marketplace itself putting in criteria that judge companies in terms of who deserves investment and who not, based on risk identification, opportunity management. So I think we have a change in overall priorities, which currently help to bring these things together.
Sir, also, in last 2 years, or I would say 2.5 years, we are facing a biggest problem in the society, that is COVID-19. So my question is how COVID-19 is an environmental health issue. It's for physically, yes, people are suffering a lot, but how is it an environmental issue, health issue?
From the scientific reports that we have been reading, COVID seems to have been deriving from an imbalance between humans and nature. And it's a transmission from animals to humans. And it's a reflection of the fact that the natural environment, the natural biodiversity, the rich forests where the animals were living in a balanced way, has often been replaced by a very dense cohabitation of wild animals and humans, and that has accelerated the spread of some of these diseases. So that's one aspect of it. And the other interesting aspect is once we saw that human activity was restricted with the lockdowns, with the restriction of movement of vehicles, and especially lorries, cars on our roads, we suddenly saw an improvement in air quality, a certain recovery of Mother Nature with certain aspects. So there is a close connection between the situation of nature, the human interaction, and we definitely need to keep the biodiversity, the balance of nature in a very, very good state, so that we don't have even more of these catastrophic diseases spreading rapidly into an overpopulated planet.
Well, we pray that we fight against this virus soon and we all be mask-free again. So on that basis, I have another question for you. That do you believe our environment is getting polluted day by day? And if it is yes, then how can we overcome it?
Yeah, we have different types of pollution. We have the air pollution. We have the carbon-related pollution that contributes to climate change. But we have other pollutants that contribute to climate change as well, such as sulfur dioxide, nitrous oxides, particles PM 2.5 that might have a direct destructive impact on our health. Not just on the health of the environment, but on our human health. I mean, in India, it's quite well known that air quality in some places is really problematic, not just from an environmental perspective, but from a human health perspective. So we have a lot of sources of pollution. We have the physical pollution, the plastic, the packaging materials, the non-biodegradable materials. We have water pollution. We have the general public or industry polluting our waterways with chemicals that we might not see, or with physical things that we might see, such as plastic pieces that then go into the ocean. We have so many different sources of pollution that we need to look at it holistically and minimize it at source. You and me, we are part of the problem, but we can be part of the solution. So the solution needs to empower everybody at an individual level, but we need to find as well solutions that are systemic, that the government and business help to identify and put in practice so that they can operate at a macro scale. We can't expect everybody to change their behavior. And even if you have a green behavior, it's very difficult to make your waste, for example, zero, because there are so many different types of wastes. And even in the context of the pandemic, we have had additional waste occurrences with the protective equipment. So it's a very complex subject, but we need to start small with our own lives and with our own practical changes that we can make.
So, sir, according to you, what is the biggest threat in the environment today?
I think if you look at it from a big picture perspective, the threat that we see currently very evident that has surprised humanity is COVID, but the big medium-term threat is climate change. If we really have a temperature rise of 2 Celsius or more, then life in many locations on this planet will be extremely difficult. We already have a lot of countries, including the country that I live in now, Philippines, with a lot of islands, archipelagos, low-lying areas that are at big risk from rising sea levels or storms or typhoons. So for me, the even bigger risk to the survival of humanity on this planet, even bigger risk than COVID long-term, is climate change. And that is where we need to take immediate action, both at a personal level and at a big picture level.
Yes, so sir, most of the time what happens that people avoid recycling. You know, they don't understand what is recycling. So do you think that it's important for the community service to recycle things again? You know, that we can, for example, plastic we cannot recycle, so avoid using it. But the things which we can recycle again, we should normalize it.
Yeah, I think again, we need to look at the strategic options that we have, and recycling is one of the options. Actually, it's not the priority number one option, in my opinion, because when you recycle something, you are going to use energy and a transformation process to turn it into something else. And very often, the recyclability of certain things, especially plastic, is not really turning them into high-grade material. The plastic bottles, the PET bottles, you need to collect them. You need to bring them somewhere to a factory, melt them down or extrude them, and you turn them into something else. So you need electricity, you need fuel. Better would be at source to reuse the materials, to get something that you can reuse again and again without the need for using electricity and fuel to manufacture it into something new. It is a high carbon footprint to recycle things, but reusing generally has a lower carbon footprint. Or repairing, or first priority might be refuse. What you don't need, refuse to get it. The extra packaging that the person in the shop where you're buying something wants to offer to you, You can refuse it. The bicycle that you bought 10 years ago, but that maybe has flat tire and one or two other problems, you can reuse it by getting it repaired. There are more and more repair shops emerging now, and more governments and consumers are asking the question, is this a product that can be easily repaired, or is this a product that's designed as a throwaway product? If it's a product that's designed as a throwaway product, you know, sometimes you see that with computers or with phones. You have the impression that, you know, companies have on purpose made it in such a way that 2 or 3 years down the line, you're kind of forced to buy a new model. Don't buy those solutions. Don't buy those brands. The brand that, you know, only has one special type of chargers. There is a fight in the European Union. All the phone chargers are supposed to be harmonized to enable that you don't need to buy a new charger because you have a new phone, but you can reuse your own charger. There's only one brand that is opposing against it, saying, oh, we have this special technology, you cannot do this. But this brand is very famous for changing every time they have a new product. And that's the reason why I dropped that brand, because the brand is continuously forcing you into upgrading to a new charger and so on and so on. So you're buying a lot of things that you cannot reuse because the latest phone or the latest computer has a new charger again. So there is the possibility that we as consumers can tell those brands, no, we're not going to accept this anymore. We want to have a streamlined process where reuse and exchange and repair has priority over continuously buying new stuff that then becomes waste.
So your words are so inspiring. I can go on with this interview on and on. But I wanted to know that what made you inspired to be an environmentalist?
When I was a youngster in my village in Germany, I always played in the forest. So I had a natural connection with nature. And then I heard about this book, Rachel Carson, The Silent Spring. That was a book that made the connection between pollution that was human-made into the environment, suddenly coming back, hurting people's lives, damaging people's lives. So I kind of started to understand the connection, that there's a lot of chemicals that we humans have invented that are bad for nature and bad for humans. So that is where my idea came up. Let's try and understand this so I can better help heal the planet. And when my late father asked me, son, what job you want to get? When I was a teenager, early teenager, I said, Father, my job will be to save the planet. And he had a shock on his face. He was like so surprised. And he said to me, son, you can't make money from hugging trees. Get a proper job. He didn't believe that this was a viable option for a career. But I already knew at that time, this is my path, this is my calling. So I followed it despite challenges, and I just made it happen. And, you know, maybe for the youngsters that are listening out there, maybe the career path was not so clear at that point in time for an environmentalist or somebody who cared for the planet. But now, especially what I mentioned earlier on, the ESG, environment, social governance, for stock exchanges, for financial institutions, rating agencies, they can't find enough qualified people. There are more job openings in that area than qualified people. When I started, it was difficult to get a job because the environmental job profile was not clear. And I still remember I was going to an exhibition and asking one guy for a job who was working on environmental management systems for business. But he said to me, nice meeting you, but I can't give you a job because you have no experience. I still remember that guy very well. 4 years later, I met him again at a conference. And I asked him, do you remember me? I asked you for a job 4 years ago, but you rejected me. He was shocked. Why? Because that event, I was the keynote speaker. And he was only giving a small talk in a side workshop at that event. And the lesson learned is not, wow, what a great guy I am or whatever. The lesson learned is, if you are hungry for information, for learning, and you're on a path of your mission, you can overtake people that have been in this industry for 10, 20 years, just based on the passion and hunger and commitment that you have, and maybe your ability to inspire people. Because if we are hungry and open to learn new things, we can assimilate new concepts much faster. And this was a new standard. And this gentleman, he'd been doing management system standard for the last 20 years of his life. He already thought he knew everything. His mindset was closed. My mindset was open. My mindset was hungry. And suddenly, after 4 years' time, I was a famous speaker in that industry, in the whole country. That's why I was the keynote speaker. So he was shocked that he had rejected me, for a simple, small, basic job that I wanted from him 4 years earlier. And now I was more famous in the industry than he was 4 years later. So this is what you can do if you have the passion, the hunger. Yes, there are always society structures. Sometimes those structures are not so open for young graduates. Maybe some structures are not as open for women as for men, but we have, more and more gender balance. We have more and more opportunities. If your heart is in the right place, you're passionate about it, then nothing can stop you.
So that's really inspiring. Like you started from, I would say from a very beginning where there was no term as environmentalist, but you made it. And our Global Dialogue Foundation also believes positivity around the world, and environment plays a very important part. So, do you wanted to say something about our Global Dialogue Foundation?
Yeah, I think that the principles that you have, illuminating the world, celebrating life, remembering who we are, fits in very nicely into the context of the global environmental challenges and opportunities. We need that unity in diversity. We need to illuminate the world together with a message of hope, with a message of peace, peace and harmony with Mother Nature. We need to celebrate that across the cultural divides. More and more people, even on a political level, are going back to the dark days of wanting to play different culture and diversity against one another. But the more inclusive we can be, the more we can remember our roots of how we used to live in harmony with nature, in balance with nature. 3, 4, 500 years ago, there were very few macro, large-scale environmental impacts. It's only been us forgetting our roots, forgetting the balance, both with nature and across our cultural divides. Once we can re-establish that balance again, once we can re-establish that harmony, then I think we will be able to much more effectively solve the global climate change challenges. That is why we need organizations like you guys at the Global Dialogue Foundation to facilitate that conversation and to inspire all of us to take the next steps together in celebrating that harmony.
Sir, any important message you wanted to give to our audience, and that would be very grateful, and for our audience also, like they wanted to hear a speaker like you. So, any important message you wanted to share?
Yes, the message is you can be the change. You are the change. It starts with me and you. The world will not get a better place if we wait for the politicians to make it all happen. If we wait for the corporates to make it all happen, we need to all work together. So for the positive energy to start taking its track and route into a larger scale change, I need to initiate that change in my life, with my family, with my carbon footprint, with my waste, with the things that I buy, I can be the change. But don't worry, you don't need to be perfect. I'm not perfect. I was voted greenest person on the planet, but I'm far from perfect, especially as a family man now. You know, it's not that easy to be as green and as sustainable as when I was living a bachelor life. When I had a bachelor life, I had a very low electricity bill. I had hardly any waste. It was just me being in charge of the decisions. Once you have kids and a bigger family, those things get more complex. Your electricity bill goes up. After the lockdown, my wife told me, honey, we got to buy a new aircon because we are spending all the time here at home. And here in the Philippines, it's hot and humid. Unless you have an eco-friendly design of a home that's a passive design, where you can then easily live without aircon, with natural airflow. And that again depends on where are you located. If you're in an inner city with a lot of vehicles and a lot of noise around you, so we have to make compromises. But important is you start with being aware of your carbon footprint, your environmental impact. Start measuring your own carbon footprint. Calculate from your electricity bill your carbon footprint. And then invest in something, maybe by planting trees yourself. You don't necessarily need to spend money, or buying some carbon credits for a project that helps the planet, plants trees or sequesters carbon. Create awareness within your own life. I published a book 5 years ago, The Green Man's Guide to Green Living and Working. I made it maybe the first carbon sink book. I calculated all the carbon footprint of printing, ink, the use of the paper. I used only recycled paper. No tree was cut to make that book. And all the carbon footprint was double compensated, so that each book represented a healing impact on the planet. The ink was made with mushroom ink. We made it as sustainable as possible. This is possible. You can be the change. You can be the difference. So start with yourself and inspire the people around you, and be the change.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your all kind words and all the information you gave us today. And on this note, I would like to add a thing that it's my I think it's a one-time opportunity that I can have a conversation with such an inspiration person. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, Sabeel, and please send my regards to all your fellow young ambassadors at the Global Dialogue Foundation. You guys are doing an important work, and the Green Drive Fellows, we really need to inspire more people out there and make this a mass movement, so we can help prevent things going wrong and celebrate the good developments, and be driven as well by the opportunities out there that are plentiful for all of us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And here's the message to our audience. If you would like to join our Green Drive Fellow campaign, I can do it, so can you. So please write a message to uidindia2016@gmail.com, and let us all come together and do our bit safe to our Mother God. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.